Hey, what's going on, folks? It's Mike here, and welcome to another session of my advice here. And today I want to talk about applying to your first internship. There's going to be a lot of folks who are going off to university or maybe finishing their first year, or maybe you're just part of a boot camp, for example, and you're looking for your entrance into the world of software engineering. So I want to give some general advice and just some thoughts on some things that were helpful and reflect a little bit on my journey with you. So with that said, here's a very fancy PowerPoint where I'm going to go through some of my advice here and just kind of lead this slide here so you can take your notes. But the bullets of the things that I want to talk about first and foremost when acquiring your first internship is you're going to be sending your resume out to a lot of different places. So that means that you want to make sure that you proofread this resume. Now, there's all sorts of templates that you can look at and find online for good resumes. I've even seen folks using ChatGPT writing their resume. Of course, you might not want to trust that completely 100%, but you want to showcase what your skills are, highlight your projects, and sort of show in the order of importance from top to bottom what your skill set is and what you're looking for. So oftentimes that might be the programming languages that you've used, some technologies, and you can cater these resumes to the actual companies that you're applying for. If you're applying for a gaming company, make sure that you note that you know graphics programming, languages like C or C++ that are predominantly used, or C#, or any toolkits that you use. If you're applying for web positions, then you can kind of highlight first and foremost the different web frameworks that you're using. I think you kind of get the idea here that you can tailor your specific resume for a specific company as you need. Generally speaking, links are fine on your resume, meaning that you can have your LinkedIn, that you've kept up to date, of course, with all of your information about your coursework and that sort of stuff that you'd have on LinkedIn. And again, if you're applying for your first internship, which I'll talk about and address a little bit later here, you might not have tons and tons of years of experience that you're displaying. Again, if you're coming at this from a, say, university student, but you can put relevant projects in the bullet points regarding different things that you achieved. You learned a specific language. You were able to implement and improve some algorithms' performance or implemented such data structures. Or maybe you're a teaching assistant for a course. Great ways to get experience. And the same applies if you're transitioning from another industry or coming from this from a boot camp, for instance, where you can go ahead and talk about the different technologies you used, that you completed a project working in a team, and so on. So highlighting these projects as part of your resume is a good idea. And try to fill the whole page and make it look professional. How can you do a little check there? Well, as I've sort of noted here, it's probably a good idea to have at least one friend or someone that you trust who will give you honest feedback to proofread your resume, and maybe just ask them if the resume looks nice, is appealing, and so on. So that's just part of the deal. You've got to have a resume before you're applying for your first internship. Now, once you've set up your resume, and again, that can be something that you create literally today. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and give you a homework assignment that you should just create a resume. Even if it's mostly empty, it'll make it easier to fill in later, even if it's in a Google Doc. Then you can make it nicer and so on. But then it's going to be actually to take that resume and start applying for jobs. So if you're in a university or a boot camp, chances are you're going to have some sort of career fair. And that's a great place where employers are specifically coming who want to hire you because you're part of a particular college, a university, a boot camp program, or whatever. And they want folks from your skill set, your background, and maybe have previously succeeded in your position and been good interns for that company. So take advantage of those resources that you're paying your money for in regards to your college tuition or boot camp fees that you're paying for. Because these are often fast paths that get your name higher up on the actual pile when it comes to recruiters being able to remember candidates, or they'll actually flip through those resumes first before perhaps going through a stack of, unlimited online submissions that folks get from their portal. It's also your chance to ask a little bit about the company if there are specific things that you're looking for, or just to, in general, show your enthusiasm and excitement. And generally at these events, if they're in person, it's also a chance for you to give a business card to an employer, but more importantly, to get their business card and follow up with them later on in the process. Again, they're going to get lots of these, so it's up to you to follow up with someone and send them an email thanking them for their time, asking them about open positions later on, very professionally, and just saying it was nice to meet them. That can go a long way over time. Now, if you don't have lots of career fairs or events being organized or just are unable to attend them, again, there's usually some sort of equivalent. There's local meetups for various programming languages or sometimes various technologies. Again, if you find yourself in a bigger city, sometimes you can go to these in person, but even virtually, there are often these events where you can make your presence known. And again, if folks know that you're a student or somebody who's just transitioning to the computer science field, they'll often be, letting you know what opportunities are available, or you can listen for those as there are announcements at these meetups, which there often are. So that's another way just to get yourself a little bit of the head of the game and give yourself the best chance possible to land that first internship role that's important. Now, the next thing to keep in mind, barring there will be, specific times for career fairs, is when do you apply for a first internship? Well, the rule in general is that you apply as early as possible within the specific cycle that you want to work. And what do I mean by this? I'll give you an example reflecting back at my own time. My freshman year of university, I actually went to a career fair before I'd even completed one college course. I was a little bit too early, but I did have a resume. I did fill it out. So at the very least, I had started that process. So I probably wasn't very impressive to the employers there, but regardless, that was a sort of initiative, I guess, that was nice to have taken. But it did teach me one important thing, that if I wanted a summer internship, I needed to be at that career fair in the fall. So that meant applying early. Employers are often starting this process because they've got to hire or interview many candidates, and that can take weeks or months for them to do that. And they're often looking far ahead and then planning what they're going to do as far as projects with the interns and so on. So oftentimes, if you're trying to secure an internship for the summer, which is most common, although they're often year-round, you can look for many places, you want to be looking at least a few months ahead in advance. And again, summer is typically the peak season when there's going to be internships or co-ops, which might be extended forms of internships. But that's not to say that there couldn't be year-long internships or internships in different seasons. Again, depending on which country you're planning on working in, there could also be some variance. And also depending on your schedule as a student, some universities allow you to do internships in any semester, whether that is the summer, the fall, the spring, or however it's divided up. So just keep that in mind and make sure that you're looking a little bit ahead of time so that you can line up these opportunities. All right, so now that you're looking ahead a few months, looking at companies, maybe you're building this list out in a Google Doc or maybe a spreadsheet somewhere, taking some notes of maybe when they hired. Maybe you missed them in a particular cycle, for instance, but you're going to look and bookmark that page and say, hey, looks like their opportunities will open this time of the year. Or if you reach out to them or through a friend, find out that, yeah, usually in September is when they open up their listings for the summer. Again, give yourself every advantage you can and try to stay organized. Build a spreadsheet. That's not uncommon for folks to do. And that goes along with applying, working early, and just thinking a little bit ahead to make it as easy as possible to acquire that first internship. Now, how are you going to help give yourself the best chance for landing that first internship? I'll have to talk about in a separate video if folks want different interviewing techniques and what goes on in a technical interview. I'm sure there's lots of other videos, but I'm happy to talk about my experiences and my general advice. But one of the things that you need to do is build some projects. Now, again, if you're in university or boot camp, you're going to be building projects by default, hopefully, and actually having a portfolio. In fact, I talk about this in some of my other videos on this channel, so you can check out the playlist below for that. But basically, you do want to have some concrete projects where you can talk about your contributions, talk about your experiences as a team or maybe as an individual, what you learned in these projects. I'll also have a separate video on what kind of projects I think are good, but in general, building little applications is a good idea because it's stuff that you can put on your resume, that you can put on your Git repository online somewhere, and prospective employers can see that. Because for myself, if I had been even a freshman or a first semester student with lots of projects, I think employers would have taken me more seriously at that very first career fair that I was at, and even given them the opportunity to ask me some questions. And again, that way I could have landed myself the best chance to find some job opportunities. So building projects is a good idea. Again, you're going to be doing this as part of your university, but keeping them organized, listing them on your actual resume, and adding in the specific bullet points of the skills that you've obtained and what your contributions were, and giving quantitative results is the important thing to do. All right, so also some other keys to acquiring your first internship. Well, it's a little bit of a numbers game. This is sort of a reality here that you're going to have to apply to a lot of companies. I still want you to be intentional when you're applying to companies that you actually want to work for. It's not a numbers game in the sense of just apply to every software company that exists. But if you want to work in gaming or graphics or web or whatever specific industry, then you should find a collection of as many of those companies as possible. If it's possible for you to have flexibility to move for a summer and work at a place, that again gives you an increased chance of landing that internship. Now, I know that might not be possible for everybody, but again, you're able to apply to a much wider spread of companies if you're willing to move and try out a new place for a summer while getting some work experience for that first critical internship. But again, my general advice with this is I do want you to find companies that you are excited about. I'll move out of here so you can see the rest of the text here. Because for example, if you want to work in games, and I'm using that as an example because I've done a little bit of that and I have some other videos on that, you want to find game companies or adjacent, maybe a graphics company or a hardware company that makes stuff for games, just to keep you in that right direction for building your skill set and making sure, you're getting the skills for the place that you want to go. There's a lot lower sort of entry point later on if you've got, your first internship to get to that second internship, especially if it's in the same industry. So just something to keep in mind to the best of your ability. I know the job market might be higher or lower in some years, but try to, again, be intentional about where you're applying. But that still means if there's 50 game companies out there, you might not get your number one that you like, but you can still be happy with number 2 or number 3 or wherever on that list. You'll be heading in the right direction. And then maybe the next cycle, you can again always do another internship. All right, so last but not least, where it comes with finding an internship, the last advice that I've got to give you is to practice your skills consistently. So there's just some reality to this in the software engineering world, whether it's right or wrong, and that's sort of a longer discussion. You're probably going to have to do some programming practice with LeetCode, HackerRank, getting a whiteboard and writing some problems out. That's the standard practice for the industry as of now. Sometimes there are take-home projects and such, but doing a little bit of practice and doing it slowly. You don't have to do it all in a weekend. In fact, that's probably not a great way to do it, but picking out one of these websites or YouTube channel to watch, which does some problems, even if it's just every weekend that you're doing one, that'll help you when you get to that internship stage, really shine above other candidates who tried to cram all the information in their mind at once, versus you if you've been practicing this consistently. Again, it could be something social that you do with your friends, other folks in your boot camp, other friends at college or whatever, to do this sort of coding practice. Maybe you'll make a YouTube channel of you just practicing if that's a way for you to push yourself and help land that internship. I say go for it. Why not? So anyways, folks, these are just a few different tips for acquiring your first internship. Proofread that resume, start taking some bullets of some things that you've done regarding projects, skills that you're comfortable with. Again, listing out technologies you actually know. Getting that put together is the first step. Then it's just putting yourself out there. Again, it's going to a career fair, just seeing how they work, watching how other people interact with. Even if you're a little bit too shy, it's still good to push yourself and try to go out to these events. And again, you have to go out there and ask for the job eventually. So why not get started a little bit early? And speaking of early, again, apply for your internships early. These are usually on a cycle. Again, some companies might have a very short cycle and be ready to hire you immediately, but a lot of the bigger companies will often run cycles where they will look for people in the fall, meaning September, October, November, that time frame, if you want to be working in May, June, and so on. So just be a little bit diligent and work ahead here. And as always, keep building projects, keep taking your courses, documenting what you're learning, building little side projects that might be of interest to you and in a particular domain that you're interested in working, just to, again, give yourself the best chance as possible to land that first internship. Once you get the first one, it's a lot easier to get that second and third one as you need. and then ultimately the final job. And as I mentioned, it's a little bit of a numbers game, so sometimes, you won't get your dream company, but you might get something that's pretty close, and that'll help get you to your dream company later on. And when you do get that call back, make sure that you've practiced, make sure that you've talked to the recruiter about what the interview will be. Most likely it'll be some sort of technical interview where you're writing code in front of someone. So just make sure that you give yourself a little bit of a head start. I think it'll also mentally help you just if you know you've been practicing for a while. So folks, with that said, those are just a few tips on landing a first internship and just a few things that have been on my mind as I think about students who are graduating and a new cycle of students who are coming into university and are going to be looking for their first job before they know it. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you have other questions about career-related stuff, feel free to comment in the discussion below. There'll probably be more videos, so make sure you subscribe and check those out. And with that said, folks, thanks for your time and attention. Good luck, and I'll see you soon.